Hi, everybody. I'm Beverly Greer, and I am pleased to be here again. It seems like this is an annual affair, which I always enjoy. I am the Chief Executive Officer for the Neuro-Vitality Center. And for those of you that have been here for a number of years and have seen me, it used to be called the Stroke Recovery Center. So, but it's the same organization, and it's still doing the same good work for people with strokes and traumatic brain injury. But in the last year or so, what we've done is we have expanded our services so that now we welcome people with other neurological problems, namely multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease. And because we wanted those people to really feel at home and be, not feel that it was just a stroke center, then we renamed ourselves Neuro to take in all neurological types of disorders. And of course, Vitality, because that's what we do there, and Center because it is a center and we want people to understand that it's their center. So we're now the Neuro-Vitality Center. And in expanding our services, we're now learning a tremendous amount about people with Parkinson's and with MS, as well as those people that have had strokes and traumatic brain injuries. And I want to share a little bit of what we know about Parkinson's. And if you have questions, hopefully some of them I can answer, or at least I can direct you to people that can answer them for you. Parkinson's. First, I'll talk about the big picture with Parkinson's. Basically, the history, the stats, who gets it, that type of thing. What is Parkinson's? For those of you that need to know the detail, what it actually is, what causes Parkinson's, what are risk factors involved with Parkinson's. We'll talk about some of the myths that are involved with the disease. Then we'll talk about symptoms, motor and non-motor symptoms. We'll talk about different stages of Parkinson's. And then we'll talk about various treatments that are available. And wrap it up just talking a little bit about how you live with the disease, because it is a chronic disease. It is something that is not going to go away. So basically, the big picture. Parkinson's disease was named after a London doctor who in 1871, I said that, published an essay called Essay on Shaking Palsy. And what he was trying to do was encourage people to study the disease of palsy, what they called palsy in that tremors. 60 years later, took a little while, a French neurologist by the name of Jean-Martin Carrel took up studying the disease and actually named the disease after Dr. Parkinson. In the 1960s, the chemical differences of people with Parkinson's were first identified, and the first effective medicinal treatments really were developed. Levodopa is, any of you that have Parkinson's, you know what levodopa is. Anybody that's involved with it knows what that is. That was created, and it remains today the gold standard of pharmaceutical treatment. We'll talk a little bit more about it as we go forward. Now, you may or may not know that 1% of Americans over the age of 65 suffer from Parkinson's. That's a tremendous number of people. Because it is in different stages, you may not recognize people that actually are suffering from the disease. But 1%, it tends to hit people in an older age group, from 60 plus. They say that there are over 60,000 new cases that are identified every year. And as I said, 75% of the cases show up in people over the age of 60. The good news is, if you make it to 75, your chances of not having Parkinson's are pretty good. Unfortunately, if you're a man, you're more likely to get Parkinson's. The biggest problem that we have with Parkinson's is there isn't a registry. I don't know if any of you have had cancer or if you have any kind of a tumor. There's a national tumor registry and cancer registry so that they can track throughout the country where different diseases occur, and you can get a better idea of if there's a change in time, if where the diseases might be localized. You can get a lot more information that way. California does have a registry for Parkinson's, but there isn't a national one as yet. Because of this, there are a lot of things about Parkinson's that we really don't know. But having said that, let's talk about what we do know. What we do know. We do know that Parkinson's disease is a movement disorder. And we know that it results from the loss of the brain's control over voluntary movement. A neurotransmitter in the brain called dopamine, most of you I'm sure have heard of dopamine, relays signals from a portion of the brain stem to the basal ganglia in the brain, in the midbrain. So it's transmitting these signals to the midbrain, and the midbrain is where movement, balance, and coordination are controlled. So when you have Parkinson's, you register a significant loss of the dopamine cells earlier than normal. And then what that results in is what is a motion disorder. Does that make sense? Everybody understands that? Okay. What causes this lack of dopamine? Now, of course, as we age, we lose dopamine normally. But when you have Parkinson's, it's an abnormal loss. It becomes a much more measurable. But what causes this to happen? Well, Parkinson's is what we call in the healthcare business, we call it idiopathic. What idiopathic means is, oh, we don't know. Now, we know that we lose the dopamine, but we just don't understand what causes this abnormal functioning of the neurons. However, there are some proposed risk factors, and these are proposed. As we said, people over 60 and under 75, in that little window, that's where you're at highest risk. Men, again, are more likely than women. Ethnicity is inconclusive at this point. Non-white populations seem more susceptible to essential tumors and multiple system atrophy rather than Parkinson's. So white or Caucasian ethnicity seems to be more susceptible to Parkinson's. Seems, and I only say seems because this is really, these are speculative at this point. There is some thought that perhaps Parkinson's is related to exposure to pesticides and insecticides. This is something that's being explored. But again, if you remember, I just said we don't have a registry. So, if we're not seeing, like where you would see pesticides and herbicides would probably be in the central part of the country where you have more farming, and there would be a greater exposure, so you might see a greater incidence of Parkinson's. We don't have that information yet. Now, if I'm talking about stroke, for example, I can say, well, there's the stroke belt, and it's probably related to dietary factors in the South, which is what we call the stroke belt. Your incidence of stroke is very, very high there. We know that because we have the national figures. So hopefully, as we go forward, we'll gather these figures and we'll be able to come up with something that we can really say, okay, this is a risk factor. In 2002, there was a study that cited obesity and overweight increasing risk. One study that some of you may enjoy, there was a study done not too many years ago that showed that smoking and drinking caffeinated beverages, which is coffee or tea, have both shown to reduce risk. And there's actually been over 50 studies that have said that. So, if you smoke and you drink coffee, hey, of course you have all the other things that go wrong with that. But, maybe it helps with Parkinson's, but, it won't help with cancer and stroke and all the other things. So that one's a tricky one. But, over 50 studies have shown that it does. We hope that, we only hope that there's a lot of research being done. And we hope that as the years go on, we're going to become a lot more conclusive as to what causes it and actually what the risk factors are, what we can look at. What we do know that Parkinson's is not contagious. We do know that it does occur every now and then in younger people. It can even, I don't believe children, but I think in younger people. Michael J. Fox is a perfect example of that. He was a young man. I think he was in his 40s or maybe 30s, maybe 40s when he contracted Parkinson's. And we do know that it is a chronic disease. It is not curable at this time. Chronic meaning it's not curable, but also chronic meaning that it does develop. That we do know that you can slow the progression of it. with various forms of treatment, be they different medical types of treatment. There are a lot of different things that can be done. It may take many, many decades to progress to the point where it becomes extremely debilitating. So it's very manageable. However, we also do understand that it is a life-changing disease. It's something that is chronic, that is not curable, that you do have to deal with, and you do have to pay attention to it. What are the 4 key symptoms? And this, we like this. I don't know if you folks have attended any of my stroke lectures, but I always talk about FAST, time. The symptoms for stroke fall under the acronym FAST. Think fast. So you look for your face, facial features, your arms, your speech, and then time to get to the ER. So with Parkinson's, we use the acronym TRAP. So you can remember these things. The T is for tremor, and that is your hands, your arms, feet, legs, or face tremor at rest. So if your hand is at rest, you see that tremor. The R is for some rigidity, and that's stiffness in your limbs or in your trunk. The A is for akinesia, which akinesia is one of our healthcare words for loss or impairment of voluntary movement. Akinesia, or bradykinesia, which is slowness of movement. So T, tremor, R, rigidity, A, akinesia, which is movement, and P is for postural instability. What that means is impaired balance or coordination of movement. A lot of people that have Parkinson's, you'll see, will not be able to stand upright. They'll move this way. That's very typical of people with Parkinson's. So you think TRAP. Those are the 4 things you're looking for. And when you see those types of symptoms, when you feel those types of symptoms, that's the time to get to a neurologist, preferably a neurologist who specializes in motion disorder. And there are many. There are, unfortunately, not right now in the valley, but hopefully within a year or so, there'll be some up here. But in your own hometowns too, I'm sure there are specialists in motion disorder, and that's who you want to see if you are experiencing any of these symptoms. Secondary types of symptoms that may become evident as the disease starts to take hold. There are different motor systems. What we call mask, which is a lack of facial expression, just a masking of your face. Slowness or slurred speech. Also, not only slurred, but maybe your voice softening like this, and you're tending to talk down. If you're finding that people are saying, would you speak up? I can't hear you. You may be actually becoming softer in your speech. Stuttering, swallowing problems. If you see all of a sudden your handwriting gets smaller, becomes very cramped. Constipation, incontinence, increased sweating, oily skin. These are all secondary types of symptoms. They're all symptoms of other things too. They're not necessarily just because you have this particular symptom means you have Parkinson's, but there's something that means you probably should pay some attention to these things and have a doctor look at you. Non-motor types of symptoms. Anxiety and depression. Cognitive abnormalities. Dizziness, lightheadedness, sleep disorders, sexual dysfunction, hallucinations. All of these, those are all symptomatic of other things as well. But and so they all deserve attention. So you want to make sure that you're talking to a neurologist, that you're getting some attention, and you're taking these types of things seriously. Because, as I say, there is treatment. There are different stages of Parkinson's. If you go into a room of, like this, if you go into 50 people, if all of you here had Parkinson's, and you asked how you first suspected that you had Parkinson's, you'd probably hear as many different stories as there are people. You'd take, and if we took out 10 of you that were diagnosed with Parkinson's all at the same time, you would see varying signs and varying signals of the progression of the disease, almost from nothing, from this much to very rapid progression. We just don't know. You don't know. There's really no way to tell or to say, this is okay. I have Parkinson's today. This is where I am, and tomorrow I'll have this, and the next day I'll have this, and the next day I'll have this. It's going to really depend on yourself, on how the disease progresses. And each case is so unique. Also, how you deal with it will be unique. In the early stage, these symptoms that I talked about, you may dismiss them as, well, I'm just getting older, or I'm tired, I don't have as much energy as I used to. We do that sometimes with the early stages of stroke as well. People will be experiencing a dizziness or a lightheadedness or slurring speech. They say, I'll just go to bed, and then they can't get up in the morning. This is the same thing with Parkinson's. Sometimes we just dismiss these things. Also, the symptoms that, they may just be annoying, but they don't really interfere with your normal daily activities. So again, you kind of, the thing that you want to pay attention to is if other people maybe are commenting on your change in your appearance or in your posture, that, or maybe your energy levels are that other people are saying, gee, you just don't seem to have as much energy as you used to. Or in your facial expressions is, how come you don't smile anymore? What's going on? That's the kind of thing you want to listen to. You want to pay attention to. But in these early stages, there's no medication that's necessary. You don't need them to control your symptoms. You just need to become aware that they're there. And then when you get to the moderate stage, usually your symptoms will start to be expressed on both sides of your body. So you may see some straight tremoring on both sides of your body. Your posture will almost invariably become stooped. And your movement may become more slow. There's also an interesting phenomenon that happens with Parkinson's called freezing. And what that is as you're moving, you may just stop. And in order to, there's also something that's kind of interesting that's happening. They're actually training like guide dogs for the blind, train dogs now to touch your foot, and then it'll allow you to keep going again. But freezing is very typical in Parkinson's, a very different type of symptom. And then in late moderate stage of the disease, balance becomes an issue. Falls and tremors may affect things of your just everyday living, like shaving, brushing your teeth. And then you really do need medication, as well as you may, as the disease progresses, you may need assistance in driving and getting out of chairs, getting out of bed, going to the bathroom, all the activities of daily living. But this is in the late moderate stages of Parkinson's. There are numerous medications. They have been very effective, particularly on the tremors. They do, unfortunately, almost all of them have some very unsettling side effects. So it's very important that you're working with a doctor and that you're getting the proper balance and getting things so that you can best tolerate these. Levodopa is converted into dopamine. And there are a number of dopamine I can't pronounce that. There are different drugs that mimic the effects of dopamine without being converted. So there are, if you don't tolerate levodopa, which is kind of the gold standard, there are others that you may take. Now, some of the side effects are really odd of some of these drugs. 18 to 17%, 8 to 17%, I love this figure, 8 to 17% of people taking these drugs for the control of tremors seem to be affected in terms of motivation and in pleasure, as well as motion. Now, what that means is that you may all of a sudden become an uncontrollable gambler, or you may find that all of a sudden You are just become uncontrollable in terms of cleaning your house or something. Your motivations get way too strong, and those are symptoms that you may not say, oh my God, it's because I'm taking this drug, but you want to monitor all of these things. The drugs are very different. Balancing the dosages and timing, it's a constant challenge, and so you really have to make sure that you have one doctor who's monitoring all of your drugs. And you want to make sure that he or she also knows about your over-the-counter drugs that you take and any supplements that you might take, because they might interact with any of these drugs. Also, really good tip is only go with one pharmacy. Make sure that one pharmacy is doing all your prescriptions. Because a lot of time the pharmacist will also go, hey, you might want to talk to your doctor about this, that. It's a very good idea. Also, carry a list of your meds with you all the time. Now, these are things that are true, actually, even if you don't have Parkinson's. There are a tremendous number of misconceptions about Parkinson's and Parkinson's meds. Levodopa it's been around a long time. There's a lot of discussions about it. There's discussions, and a lot of information you get from the internet. You'll find a lot of different opinions on things. One of the things that is said is that it can be toxic. It's not, nor does it stop working. What happens is symptoms do escalate and dosages may change as we go forward, but it is not toxic. Chances of you winding up in a wheelchair with Parkinson's are not really great. That's a misconception. You do not become demented. It's not a precursor to dementia, so you don't have to think that. It's not inheritable. Your kids aren't going to have PD necessarily. Surgery, it's sometimes said surgery doesn't work. There are some surgeries that do work for Parkinson's. Alternative medicines, unfortunately, have not been proven to help you. This is a myth at this point. One of the ones that I like is there was a big thing on the internet that foot massage would cure Parkinson's. Hasn't held up under study. Well, maybe it will, but it hasn't held up at this point. Now, once it's reached the later stages, when you have advanced stage Parkinson's, you may be eligible for what's called deep brain stimulation surgery. And this is something that's quite effective. And what it is, it's basically an implant is put in the brain. They call it DBS surgery. An implant, it does control tremors and rigidity. However, the deep brain stimulation surgery does not, the implant, it doesn't address the cognitive issues that can happen with Parkinson's, but it has shown consistent benefits up to about 5 years, which is really good. And it will control the rigidity and the tremoring so that you can be more functional, which is great. Stem cell research, we have to think about stem cell research. It has not yet been it's in clinical trials now with various things. It's holding out great hope, and we hope as the future goes that it will get better and better. It's very important if you have Parkinson's, and also any chronic disease, that you keep up to date. There are great websites. The Michael J. Fox Foundation is terrific. I mean, they have a wonderful website. They do a lot of funding of research, and they're always up to date on what clinical trials are going on, what the stages are, what kinds of advances, anything that's new. It's a very good website, as is the Parkinsons Disease Foundation. Very good websites. They do have tremendous amounts of information. The Parkinson's Foundation has a lot of brochures that you can have sent to you. Great stuff. There has been a lot of false starts. There was a great deal of information, great deal of research being put into antioxidants. And a lot of that was also where the supplements all came in, where this was all going to help, and that has not proven out, unfortunately. So current research is focusing on a particular protein that's found naturally in the brain and body, which tends to clump abnormally if you have Parkinson's. And they're looking to see if there are new drugs that can get that to not happen, and if this will affect. So you need, but it's ongoing, and you need to keep watching this on an ongoing basis. There also is an increased focus on genetics. And there's the theory being that maybe some small genetic variances may combine with other factors to increase risk. But the focus, the 100% focus is really on halting the progression of the disease, so that once we've discovered that we have the Parkinson's, we don't continue to advance. Now that said, there are studies that are indicating that vigorous exercise can slow the progression of the disease, as well as fight the anxiety and depression that goes with it, and the apathy that also is symptomatic of Parkinson's. That's something that we do a lot at the Neuro-Vitality Center, where we offer exercise programs. We get people with Parkinson's really trying to be as active as they can physically, because the studies really have shown this can slow the progression. It doesn't get rid of it, but it does slow the progression. Speech therapists, we also offer speech therapy to people with Parkinson's. Now that doesn't mean speech therapy, what you think of traditional is learning how to talk, or what it is swallowing, help with learning how to swallow with the problem, how to project your voice. Remember I said your voice tends to go like this when you have. So learning how to project, to recognize when that's happening. And also the speech therapists deal with the masking, face masking issues, which is all very interesting. So these are things that can help slow the progression, help you cope with the disease. Additionally, we recommend always, as do all of the people in the Parkinson's world, support groups are really good to talk to other people, to gather coping skills, how you deal with a chronic disease, how you deal with this as your day-to-day life. Also, keep up with the latest information on medical advances, clinical trials, and also debunking those myths that you're going to find when you go onto the internet. But remember, the most important thing in dealing with any chronic disease and dealing with Parkinson's is attitude. Your attitude. Nothing at all replaces a good attitude towards dealing with a chronic disease. And that said, I'm going to wrap up here with the words of a humorist, a lady by the name of Vicki Clapping, I think her name is Clapping. She's an author, and she's a blogger and a former newspaper columnist, and she does have Parkinson's. She said that everybody manifests Parkinson's differently, and it progresses at different rates. She said one of the most common symptoms, however, she says, is a visible one-sided tremor, usually of the arm or hand, which she had in spades. Well, crap is what she said. As the years went by, she said, I discovered the tremor, while inconvenient and somewhat embarrassing, had its uses. Simply put, we Parkinson's patients rock, bad pun intended, she said, at certain tasks. She said, what the hell, if you got the disease, particularly one with no current cure, you might as well learn to get it working for you. So here are some of the ways she says, for her, the tremors have come in handy. Number one, she said, rocking your fussy grandchild to sleep. She said, give mom and dad a break. 5 minutes with you and the little whaler is out. Number two, feeding your fish. Need a little shake of food twice a day, one good tremor twitch, and the Goldie twins have got the exact right amount of dinner. Number three, dusting or cleaning. So we can wipe, dust, or clean any surface in your house faster than a team of Molly maids. Show us a dirty spot, then stand back and watch us blur. Cooking and baking. We can whisk eggs all day long. And you need sprinkles on those cookies? Hand over the jar, walk away. We got this, she says. Number five, make popcorn. None of that wimpy microwave crap either. The good stuff requires tedious movements of pan shaking at the stovetop. If you want a bowl for a late night movie, no problem. Also, this is good, making the perfect martini. Only if you like them shaken, not stirred. We're your dream bartender. We can host a party of any size with ease. And if your blender goes blades up, we can offer a fabulous margarita. So as we said, attitude is the way to go. If you wanted more of her book is called Shake, Rattle, and Roll with It, Living and Laughing with Parkinson's, and it's available at Amazon.